Hi everyone, welcome to the muster drill. I'm Scott, and stick around to find out why a bunch of Carnival cruise passengers are fuming mad. Hi everyone, welcome back. So, most of you will remember that I sailed on the Carnival Magic from Norfolk for the first time last month. June 4th to the 10th was our sailing. And of course, I made it no secret about how horrible that boarding process was and just how long it took, how inefficient and unorganized the entire parking process was, and how it just continued to be a complete total nightmare once we got to the port building. And for those of you who did not see that video, there'll be a link up here in the corner that you can click on and go and check it out for yourself and see how horrible that entire experience was. So before I talk about what has many cruise passengers from that June 4th sailing still extremely upset and unable to put that entire experience behind them, so after all of the difficulties we had getting on board and the cruise itself not being the best cruise due to weather delays and a port being canceled and long lines and terrible internet and all kinds of other stuff that people were upset about, and then the de-embarkation process being nearly as terrible as the embarkation process at the end of that cruise. So after all of that, many cruisers got back to the Cedar Point parking lot, which was where we were all told to park by Carnival, to discover that their cars had been broken into and otherwise crashed into by allegedly the security van or the security vehicle that was hired by the city of Norfolk to patrol that parking lot, which many of us would agree did not do anything of the sort. Just because of the sheer number of people's cars that were broken into, there's no way security was doing their job or was even present during the entire time we were gone. So yeah, so all these people got back there and they discovered that their cars were broken into. So you had to drive home with broken windows and all kinds of damage to the inside of their vehicles. And it rained while we were gone, so a lot of the people's interiors were soaking wet and so forth. So of course the police came. They did very little. They took some police reports, and shortly after that a local news station ran a story trying to get answers for everyone, and there was a lot of finger pointing, and of course the security company's representative completely ignored the cameras, refused to answer any questions or even say a word to anybody, and everybody was really just left with, what should I do now? What am I going to do now? Who's gonna take care of this? So most people ended up filing a claim with the city of Norfolk. They received a letter acknowledging the claim and that an investigation would be conducted to see what was going to happen with the entire situation. So the local news station that ran the original story has done a follow-up story, and I'm going to be showing that here in a moment, and then afterwards I'm going to come back with some additional information. So here's the video.
Back now with an update to parking problems in the lot where people leave their cars for cruises out of Norfolk.
You saw here last month about break-ins and damage done to cars in the city-owned Cedar Grove lot. It's been a mess for those passengers, and they thought somebody would compensate them for the damage. Even the mayor said something needed to be done. Well, now it doesn't look like that's going to happen. 10 on your side's John Dowding is following up tonight.
Cruise goers who park in this lot typically before they get on their cruise ship came back last month to their cars vandalized. Now, they had hoped the city would be able to help them cover the cost of their repairs, but they're finding out now it's all up to them, leaving many questions. The primary one, whose fault is it that their cars were vandalized?
We were led to believe that they were going to take care of it.
A month after dozens of cruise passengers' cars were vandalized, they're now finding out the city isn't liable for damages to their vehicles. We spoke to a man from Newport News who asked to be referred to as T. He returned from the Bahamas to find someone busted the back window of his car. Almost $500 later, he's got a letter from the city saying he has to front the bill.
Everybody's just supposed to take a loss. the city don't feel like they're liable at all. I just don't get that.
In a statement to 10 on Your Side, Carnival Cruise Line said in part, quote, "We're in discussions with Norfolk Port officials about our just finished season and upcoming plans. Improving parking for our guests, including improved security, is at the top of our list." But T says he doesn't blame the cruise line.
It was city-owned property. You hired an outside company to secure it. They didn't do their job, so therefore you're held liable.
I spoke to Norfolk Mayor Kenny Alexander, who said in part, quote, "We're doing everything we can to harden the infrastructure of surface lots and garages. I have questions for the security company. Council is awaiting a report from the city manager to consider options to help." As he waits, T has a message for the city.
You got to do better. They tried to make it seem like it would have been sympathy to help us. No, you're doing your job. You're doing what you're supposed to do.
As he's waiting to find out if he'll ever get help from the city of Norfolk, T tells us he's really thinking twice now about whether he's going to get on a cruise ship here in the Mermaid City. In Norfolk, I'm John Dowding, 10 on Your Side.
So the cruisers whose cars were broken into had received a letter from the city telling them that they were not liable for the damage and that they were basically on their own for whatever damage was done to their car. You can imagine they were pretty mad about that, so they contacted the news station and they did that follow-up. So I'll also be putting some comments from the cruisers whose cars were broken into. Naturally, they're very upset about the situation. And I think what it all comes down to is a legal doctrine or a law called sovereign immunity. Now, if you've never heard of sovereign immunity or you don't know what that means, the simplest explanation of it is that the government is never responsible for anything that it does to anybody and can never be held liable or accountable for anything that in a normal and otherwise different situation any other person or business or entity would be. I myself found out the hard way about the existence of sovereign immunity. Once upon a time, I was rear-ended by the Deputy Secretary of Education for the state that I live in, and she was driving a state-owned vehicle. That was a perk of the high-level position she had. And when I went to recover the damages that were, done to my vehicle, I found out that the state would not be paying for any of that. Really like this crazy blanket, get out of jail free card for the government. And even though Carnival mentioned that they are working with the city to come up with a solution for the upcoming fall cruising season from Norfolk, I stand by my original statement in that I will never sail from Norfolk again, and I'm positive that there are many other cruisers who also agree. And the last thing I wanted to talk about today is a change that was recently announced by the government of Bermuda to the COVID protocols. If you don't know, the COVID protocols for recent infection have always been if you can provide a letter from a doctor that states that you were positive for COVID in the last 90 days and you've recovered, you don't have to submit a negative COVID test when you're embarking on a cruise ship. And many countries, regardless of how you arrive in that country, are requiring a travel authorization, and most of them allow you to submit that through a form online. Now, Bermuda charges $40 for this authorization, but some countries don't charge anything. It just depends. So Bermuda recently announced that they are no longer going to accept that letter of recovery, and that regardless of the situation, everyone has to submit a negative COVID test at the time they embark on the ship that's heading to Bermuda. And I can see other cruise destination countries or the cruise lines themselves eliminating this protocol completely across the board, just simply because the recent variants are making reinfection much more likely and causing a recent infection to just not be the safety net that it once was. And if those changes do happen, we'll let you know in a future video. So I think that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. And if you like this video, don't forget to click that like button. And then don't forget to click the subscribe button. It won't cost you anything. You click it once, you're done. It'll really help us out a lot. And then don't forget to click that notification bell so that you know every time we upload a new video. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.